Hello, and welcome to Innovating Education, the podcast where we explore transformative ideas, leadership strategies, and groundbreaking innovations shaping the future of education. I'm your host, Dr. Riley Williams, and today we have a truly inspiring guest joining us, Lisa Parry. Lisa is a seasoned educator with over 30 years of experience and a recognized thought leader in school leadership, mentorship, and communication. She's also the co founder of the Good to Great Teaching Mentoring Program, a TEDx speaker, and a champion of building positive school cultures. We'll dive into her leadership philosophy, how she balances mentorship with administration, and what it truly takes to create lasting change in education. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Riley. It's so much fun to be here with you. I appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to start at the beginning. What inspired you to pursue a career in education, and how has your journey evolved over the past 30 years?
I wish I knew. I graduated in 1990, and my senior feature, it's something that a lot of South Dakota schools do, a little blurb in the newspaper about where you're going and what you're going to do. In May of 90, my senior feature ran, and it said I was going to go to South Dakota State University for broadcast journalism. And somehow in September of that same year, I ended up at the University of South Dakota getting ready to be an English teacher. And I just think it was exactly the life I was meant to live. And I don't know that I made a conscious decision, but I ended up in those classes. I've always loved to read. I love to write, and I love people. So it's just kind of the perfect intersection of all the passions that I've had.
Now, despite your responsibilities as a principal, you still choose to teach one course every year. Why is that important to you?
Well, in my second job, I taught for 1 year in a district and then ended up moving over to where we are now. The principal at the school where I took my job taught government. And I watched him kind of maintain those relationships with students that are so important to leading a school. And it also kept him from, being in some ivory tower where we teachers would look and say, you don't remember what it's like to be a teacher. And so I tell every principal group I talk to, I teach AP language and composition. I have seniors. And while sometimes I question, like, what are you doing when I'm sitting there with a stack of papers or trying to figure out what we're going to use as a springboard next for what we're going to write? I think about the way I leverage my relationships with those seniors to make sure that our school runs the way that we, myself and them, they're the leaders, want it run. And it also helps keep me grounded with teachers. I have to post grades. I have to deal with late work. I have to handle parent communication. And so teach a class, find a way. And I know some people, I'll pop in here and pop in there. I really don't think it's the same. And maybe it can't work for everyone, but I think where there's a will, there's a way. And I don't know that there's a better way to spend an hour than with the kids that you serve, your most important stakeholders.
Now, your signature talk, The Power of the Principal, focuses on visionary leadership, fostering a positive school culture, and instructional leadership. Out of these, which do you find the most challenging to achieve and why?
Instructional leadership can be hard. On one hand, good teaching is good teaching. And whether you're kindergarten or you're physics, good teaching is good teaching. And at the same time, I'm very aware that as an English teacher, and particularly a writing teacher, there's a certain subset of skills that really go into doing that well. And there's a certain a subset of skills that go into teaching kindergarten well or physics well. And one thing I'm always reluctant to do is to put myself into a space where I truly don't have expertise. And I think humility is so important. I have the best kindergarten teacher in the world. You can't have her. I go in and I learn from her. Like, she's the instructional leader at that moment. And so I think instructional leadership is hard, but what I try to do is go into the classrooms of my master teachers and take something away that I'm watching them do that works so well. So if it's kindergarten, how can I bring that to my first and second grade teachers? Again, I'm high school English. If it's physics, how can I take that into algebra 2 or pre-calc and trig? Those are not like my safe places or places that I want to teach. But when I watch a good teacher do something in those disciplines, I really try to soak it up and use it because I know enough to know I don't know in a kindergarten classroom.
You emphasize the importance of perception and validation in communication. How can principals use this approach to resolve conflicts and foster collaboration?
Well, we make the mistake so often of expecting ourselves out of other people. And this is something that I talk about everywhere I go. I'm a really quick responder to an email. I don't like things in my email box. I've got some OCD. So if you email me, Riley, I'm going to get back to you pretty quickly. Then what happens as a result of that is if I don't hear from you, I start to tell myself stories that aren't true. I start to catastrophize the situation. I decide you hate me. I decide that I somehow offended you. I decide that you're going to go to the board and try to get me fired. And really, you're busy. Like, you're too busy. You have something else to do other than hop on my email. And so, mindsets are everything. Absolutely. You're never going to change your behavior, and you're never going to change the way you communicate in your messages until you change the way you think. And people so often want to change their behavior first, and it doesn't work like that until you tell yourself that you can't, and convince yourself by going. You got to go to the mental weight room. I'm not an exerciser, but I've watched people exercise. And you don't go into the weight room once and lift a bunch of weights and walk out and you're strong and you're going to stay strong. The brain is the same. So I have to constantly revisit the mental weight room with the idea that I can't expect myself out of others. And when I do that, I don't end up approaching people in a way that makes them defensive, that makes them think that I'm standing in judgment of them because they're different from me. And so having that really, it helps me navigate a lot of conflict and avoid a lot of conflict, because there are so many ways to be good at this. And I talked about my kindergarten teacher. She is so different, so different. Her style is so much different than mine, and she's fantastic, and I'd like to think I am too. And so I don't go in there and say, because you're not like me, you don't do this the way I do it, there must be something wrong, we've got to change it. Again, I want to learn from her. She's not me and I'm not her. And that's good. That's good in our school to have just a wide variety of personalities, teaching styles, pedagogical views. I think the more variety you can get, the better off you are.
As a co founder of the Good to Great Teacher Mentoring Program, you've guided many educators. What advice do you give new teachers to help them thrive in their careers?
Well, the first thing is, you're not going to know what teaching is the first year, and you're probably not even going to know what it is the second year, because you're going to struggle. You're going to be terrible. I was so terrible as a first year teacher. This is something too. Principals, think back to yourself. When you're evaluating early career teachers, you can't use your current self as the benchmark. You have to go back to your first year self. And if you were anything like me, you were floundering. Nothing prepares you for having your own classroom. Student teaching is great, but it's artificial. And so I tell early career teachers that you're not going to know what it is probably until year 3. I've got 2 children who are teachers. In the first year, they went through all those pains. My son now is a second year teacher, and my daughter is a 5th year teacher. And she's finally coming into her own and seeing all of the wonderful things that education can be. And he is doing much better than he did as a first year teacher, and he'll do even better next year. So I think it's really important to be patient with yourself and to grant yourself grace. I also think, though, that there are some schools where the leadership doesn't show up the way it needs to for new teachers. And if you're an early career teacher and you find yourself struggling in your current environment, before you leave the field, find another school. And you might find that in that other school, you are better supported, and that you actually find your way, your gifts. If you are in one school and you're not feeling it, and then you go to another school and you're not feeling it, it isn't for everyone. It isn't for everyone. But I worry sometimes that really good people with really great potential bail. And here's the deal. We lose the best ones. We lose the people-pleasing perfectionists, because they set the bar so high for themselves. And then when they can't meet that bar, they're so disappointed in themselves. If you're mediocre or don't care at all, you can hang on forever, because you're never going to get rattled by the things that are happening to you. But what makes me so sad is those people who would be the best for our students in school, they're the ones most likely to leave because they just beat themselves up. And one thing that I've thought a lot about, burnout is real. Burnout is I cannot do this one more minute because I've done it so much and I'm just, right? It isn't burnout for young teachers. It's disillusionment. It's the disconnect between what they thought this was going to be and what it is. And I think we all went into education starry-eyed and going to change the whole future. And that's good. I mean, if you don't start like that, you're really going to be in trouble when you're my age. But young people come in and have this fairy tale perception. We all played school at home, and we did all the things. And they come in and they're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And if somebody doesn't support them through that disillusionment can really break them. And they just need to know it's okay to not be okay. You just have to be 1% better tomorrow and 1% better the next day. Everybody should read Atomic Habits. That's how you change. You're not going to revolutionize yourself overnight.
So, how do you balance mentoring the next generation of educators while managing the responsibilities of being a principal, professor, as well as consultant?
What I'm very aware of is that each of those prongs feeds the other. The reason that I can mentor, the reason that I can speak, the reason that I can be here with you and talk at length about education is because I've been in that world for 31 years. And then I add the professorship, and now that informs really in a lot of ways how I deal with new teachers because I'm seeing them now move out. And the DOE, I'm exposed to so many new principals, new teachers, and they teach me so much that I can come back then and I can be a different Mrs. Parry because I'm understanding that this is maybe a challenge that I've never experienced, but it seems to be something now with new teachers and new leaders. This is something that they're looking for from their leaders, and everything informs my perspective. So yes, in some ways I can look at it as all of these outputs, but that isn't how I choose to think about it. Back to mindsets. I choose to think about each of those roles as something that feeds into my professional practice, informs my practice. And so I feel like every job that I do is easier because of the other jobs I do. And again, that's a mindset. I could decide that I'm overworked and this is too much and I'm freaking out. I could decide that, but I don't. I decide that my work outside my school helps me be a principal, and my work as a principal helps me in my work outside of school.
Now, we spoke briefly about disillusionment, but teacher retention is going to be an ongoing challenge in education. What trends or obstacles do you see emerging, and how can schools address those?
I'm on TikTok quite a bit, part of it because I am addicted to it like everybody else is. But I watch a lot of what they call teacher quit talk. And it's a whole subgenre. It's a rabbit hole you can spend a lot of time in. But I like it because it informs my perspective. So I see all of these generally younger teachers they're done. They're done. They've had it. And most of the time they say, there's a hallway maybe where things are going to bubble up and the admin is nowhere to be found. And you know what? To me, that's exactly where I should be at those times. If it's predictable, it's preventable. I spend my time in the lunchroom when our older elementary and middle school kids are in there because that's kind of a hot zone for things happening. And do I want to be in the lunchroom? Oh my gosh, no. Watching those people drown everything in ranch dressing, it's just like, oh, I just have to keep my eyes up. I can't watch the meat. It's ranch on ranch on ranch. But I would rather be in there watching them drown everything in ranch than deal with the aftermath of what's going to happen if I'm not in there. And I have paraprofessionals there. I have lunch staff in there. I have someone who does all the lunch numbers. That environment is not a pleasant one for them to be in if these kids are just left to their devices. And so I think it's really important for admin to realize that teachers don't expect us to cut off everything at the pass. That's impossible. But if there is a pattern, you better be doing something to try to stop it. And it doesn't even mean you have to stop it, but you better be giving a full faith effort. Because when you raised your hand and said, I want to be the leader of this place, what you signed up for was the lunchroom, the scary hallway, the bathroom, the kid who likes to destroy materials in the class. You said, I want to take that. And if you don't want to, then you should say, you know what, next year I want to go back to the classroom, or I'm leaving. But it's about the hard part. And honestly, to be a principal, and I wonder what other people who do my job will think about this, 99% of the time, my job's easier. I don't have 20 people sitting in front of me waiting for me to do something or to help facilitate their learning. 1% of the time, my job is so taxing, demanding, emotional, terrible, awful, scary, humbling. And that 1%, that's where I need to be seeking out those situations, and I need to be facing them because teachers have enough to do. In my school, we're duty free. My teachers have no recess duties, no lunch duties, no bus duties. Paras and my superintendent, we do that. I need those teachers to have as much time. And, maybe they have 20 minutes and they don't use it as a prep, but they just unwind a little bit. That makes everything better for students. I don't know why we think we have to fill every minute of a teacher's day. When we give them time to breathe and to just decompress, we also set up a situation where they're going to enjoy their job a lot more and be a lot better at it. So this is what I think. Admin, you got to get in there. And you got to do the hard part. And you got to give your teachers as much breathing room as you possibly can. And you've got to really, really support those ones who really, really love it, because you're most likely to lose them.
So, one of your speaking topics is people pleasing and likable leadership. How do these concepts impact a leader's ability to make tough decisions?
Well, we're always better, perform better, feel better around people that we like. So Harvard did a study. Amy Cuddy is a part of this, and I like her research, that likability is kind of the intersection between warmth and competence. So you have to be somebody who they perceive that you care about them, and they have to perceive that you know what they're doing. And so say you're at a restaurant, really nice wait staff, comes back and the whole order's wrong. Okay. Or kind of a crabby person, but you get everything you want. Neither of those is ideal. And of course, if you're 0 for 2 on that, you might as well just, I don't even know where you should go. Not schools and not restaurants. But to be warm and competent, that's the secret sauce. And when you show up that way, and first of all, people have to know that you care about them and that you want good things for them, that you're not there to sandbag them, you're not there to sabotage them. And then after that, have to know that you know what you're doing, that you know your job. And so those things are, I think, the cornerstone of good leadership. When I talk about people pleasing, I'm just very aware that I'm not going to change. I mean, the older I get, the more I get like I have always been. And I've decided I'm not going to try to change, because I can't. And it takes too much cognitive load to try to be something different than you are when you're showing up for other people. So I figured out that with people pleasing, I just need to lean into it. And it's something I can leverage. And it drives me crazy if you go on Amazon and you put in people pleasing, it's all so negative. The disease to please. And it's not a disease. It is not always ideal. But I think that because I do care about other people's experiences, I do care about their outcomes, I do understand that a lot of things in K-12 are emotional. I think that makes me better at it. And I like to say it is always personal, but that does not mean it's about me. If you went into K-12 and you didn't think it was going to be personal, then you didn't think. These are people's kids. I mean, what did you think would happen when things didn't go well? Did you think that everybody, oh, okay, I understand? Absolutely not. That's not how it works. And so as a parent, now I'm a grandparent, and I've got parents who come in and they've got real concerns, behavior, academic, social, whatever it is. That's very personal, incredibly personal. And the empathizer in me wants to make sure that your fears are calmed and that you know that everything is going to be okay. I don't always manage that because, of course, as you know, I can't tell everybody everything, right? And so here's another thought I always have. If you knew what I know, you would likely think what I think. But I can't tell you what I know because for blah, 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 right? All the things. So when people come in and they're upset, of course they are. I mean, I have a 360 view of everything. I did when my kids were in school. I've always held the keys to the kingdom. And so when we as educators kind of get upset at parents for, whatever involvement they have. They're not in the know. They're on the outside looking in, which means they only see a very small sliver. And because we can't tell them very much, they can get upset. And I understand that. And if it was my kids or my grandkids, I would want someone to listen to me and to care about how I felt about the situation.
So, what advice would you give to leaders who struggle with balancing approachability and authority?
I don't like the word authority. My job is to empower people to do their jobs. My job is to hire good people and then to give them what they need to give kids what they need. That's my job. And so, the way that I think about things, my attitude about things, the empathy that I have, it plays right into it. I'm very interested in a teacher's success. I'm very interested in a teacher's satisfaction. I'm very interested in a teacher feeling valued, because somebody who doesn't, that's going to show up in the classroom in a way that's going to negatively impact teaching and learning. And so, as I'm just talking with you, I'm thinking about how intertwined everything is, all the way that I think about things. I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to establish some mindsets that have to be your North Star. And you have to decide what matters to you, what you value, what you think works. Because, my school is, I work in a small rural school. That's not the same as schools in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's just different than that, or even in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So every principal, teachers too, need to find their North Star. And you really just have to stay on that until something proves to you that you should change. And then when something proves to you should change, you better change. When we know better, we do better. We've got to be open to the fact that the way that we think things should be done might change tomorrow because of something that happens.
So, being a 2021 National Blue Ribbon School, as well as a 2020 ESEA Distinguished School, that's no small feat whatsoever. What specific practices do you think contributed to these successes?
I tell people relentless pursuit. It is really, really, really important to us that every kid is proficient or advanced in reading and in math at all of the grades that they're assessed. Now, every once in a while, we get a group that is. There was one year that I taught juniors 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 100% of my juniors were proficient or advanced in ELA. That is the mark. And we don't just want to outpace the state. We don't just want to outpace the nation. And year over year, we look at, so this year we'll have third grade scores. Next year, when those guys are fourth graders, we're going to look at everybody in third grade. We're going to look at where they were missing the mark. And do I love that a lot of our growth or a lot of our commitment to academics is assessment based? Not necessarily. Those assessments have a lot of flaws, a lot of them. But we have to have something, and that data, plus we use some NWEA maps data. That data helps us look at where kids are and helps us move them forward. Now, again, we're a small school. And so my third grade teacher can really hyper focus on her third graders. And then the fourth grade teacher, they talk, and we just are constantly building bridges. But I think there has to be a little bit of competitiveness in you too. Like when our scores come out, I pull those and I pull schools that are kind of like ours. So I'm looking at apples to apples. And if somebody's doing better, then I got to figure out what they're doing and how we're going to do it. So I think you have to have a little bit of grr in you. You have to have a little bit of like, you know what? We're getting all of these people across the finish line. And do we always? No. But I'm telling you, every year, that's the goal. That every kid crosses the finish line. That every kid is able to read and do math at grade level per that assessment. And so that's the key. People ask me this all the time. What do you do? What do you use? It's not the curriculum. It's not. You can get kids there with 10 different curriculum. It is not the curriculum. I mean, a bad curriculum obviously hurts things, and you want a good one, but it's the way the teachers execute it, and it's the daily expectations. You are not just going to sit here and be a spectator. You are in this. You are working. You are learning. And if you're not going to right now, we're going to find another time in the day when you will, because this is important, and this is why we're here. So relentless pursuit. And is it tiring? Oh my gosh. There's times I just want to say, we'll be talking about a student. I'm like, I just want to say, let it go. Let it go. And for about 5 minutes, we dream, oh, let it go. And then we're like, no, we're not going to let it go. There's no letting it go. It's imperative that they graduate ready to do whatever they want to do. And you got to be able to read and write, and you got to be able to do math in order to have every door open to you. So when I think about the third graders, I'm projecting 9 years ahead when they're seniors. They've got to be ready. They have to be ready. Ultimately, I have one job. I have a million jobs, but ultimately, you could say, Lisa, you have one job: to get kids ready for what's next. That's my job. And so everything has to kind of be funneled through that, the North Star, right? Get them ready for whatever it is that comes next.
Now, your TEDx talk is amazing.
Thank you.
Can you say what the key message was and then why it was so important to you?
I don't want to live for the weekend. I do not want to live for the weekend. And I'm not math, right? So I can't even tell you what percentage more days there are Monday through Friday than there are weekends in a year. But it's a lot more Mondays through Fridays than there are Saturdays and Sundays. And I do not want to live for that small portion of time. I grew up in nursing homes, and this definitely has informed my perspective. I grew up around people who had very little time left. They did not have much time. I always say their windshields were pretty small and their rearview mirrors were huge. Like they had all these experiences to look back on and not that much of a future. And some of them would say to me, oh, Lisa, you've got so much life ahead of you. And fortunately, I did, because here I am still in my 50s. But I was just always aware that time is finite. I always knew that. And then 10 years ago, my mom, who loved to work, she was an orthopedic nurse. And that woman never missed work. She loved, loved, loved work. And she got multiple myeloma and eventually died. And it was taken from her. What I remember thinking is, I get to work. I'm healthy enough to work. In the last year before she passed away, she had neuropathy and all these things that the chemo had done to her. Sometimes I swear the drugs are worse than the disease. But she had to step away from work. And I know that was as hard as anything. So I keep a picture of her in my office. And whenever I'm throwing a pity party about my job and how hard everything is, I look at her and I think, you know what? That got taken from you. You did not have the opportunity to say, you know what? I'm going to step away and enjoy my grandkids and enjoy traveling. She never had that. And I don't even know if she wanted it. I don't know if she would have ever retired. But it was taken from her. And I will be danged if I'm going to go to work and sulk around when I'm healthy. And when somebody wants me around and they keep saying, come back, I'm going to appreciate that. And I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. It must be a mindset of mine because my 3 kids have all graduated. And seniors' parents will always say to me, oh, how do you get through it? Aren't you so sad? And I would say, I always knew it was going to come to an end. When you think like that, then you do appreciate the moments. Like we would go to gyms, and my daughter was in one-act plays and we were everywhere all the time. Never even saw my house. And I always appreciated it and was grateful for it because I knew someday it would be done. And I think if you don't think like that when you're in it, when it's over, you know you missed something. I refuse to miss anything. I refuse to look back and say I shoulda, coulda, woulda. I'm doing everything I think I can do to the best of my ability. And so when it's done, whether I give it up or it's taken from me, I can be okay about that.
That's amazing. Now, you've described conflict resolution as a superpower. What fundamental skills or mindsets should leaders develop to master this ability?
Well, there's never one way to look at anything. I go in and I talk to people who are at odds with one another, and I don't know anything other than what I'm told. And it's very easy to see that over here on the left, here's what I appreciate about the way that you're approaching this. And here's what you need to think about if you want to resolve it. And then you go to the other side and you say, here's what I appreciate. And here's what you've got to understand. And one of my favorite things to do is to work with districts who maybe have admin versus teacher or teacher versus teacher moments, because I can find ways to get people to kind of lay down their swords and just sit and talk and listen to the other person's perspective. And again, it's not about agreeing. People who are in the level of conflict that I get called in on, they've done some things. Like, this is not just, she parked in my parking spot once and I'm angry. We're talking about things that have built up and built up and built up. You have to own some of it. And it's easier to do that with somebody who doesn't know you. It's easier to say, yes, I messed up, to somebody who's going to go away and not be back. But I think the key to conflict resolution is just to know that for both of those people, they would rather get along. I mean, sometimes I'm mad just to be mad, because it just feels good to be mad and storm around about things. But generally, people want to get along because friction is no good at work. But it just takes them seeing the other's perspective. And sometimes I guess my role is just drawing that out into the open. Just getting out into the open what I think you've done perfectly in this situation and where I think that you might reconsider your choices. And once you get that out, people start to see that they're not as far apart as they thought they were. And again, please don't expect yourself out of others. I mean, that's a really important piece of conflict resolution. The source of conflict is often, well, I wouldn't. Okay, she did. She wanted to, and you don't have to, and that's fine. You have to agree to disagree.
You often say that every day we make a choice. How can educators and leaders adopt a mindset that fosters growth and resilience in the face of our daily challenges?
Well, no matter what, at the end of a workday, you're going to be different than you were at the beginning. So no matter what, my 8 o'clock self is different than my 4 o'clock self. Something happens to change me, whether it's a 1-degree change or a 360. Every day I'm different. And I think that you have to understand that and know you've got to really be careful, because if you're changing each day to become more negative, to look for what you don't want to see. One of my big things is if I want to walk around my building and find kids not meeting expectations, I'll see it. If I want to walk around my building and find teachers not meeting expectations, I'll see it. If I want to walk around my building looking for teachers and students meeting, exceeding, killing expectations, I'll see it. And that definitely colors the change that I experience every day. I'm either going to feel good about what we're doing and feel empowered to make changes, or I'm going to think that we're on this downward slide and there's nothing that I can do. Our kids can have phones in schools, but they're not supposed to have them on their desks. And so when I teach AP, every once in a while a teacher or a student will have a phone on their desk. And I'll say, oh, Megan, thanks for putting your phone away. And when I do that, when I look for the people who've met the expectation, it makes the class period so much more pleasant than looking for the people who haven't done what I've asked and then have to be crabby about that. So when we're talking about growth and resilience, I think a big part of it is seeing what you want to see and then communicating that. And it isn't putting your head in the sand. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about knowing that there are good things going on in your building and people doing the right thing. That should empower you to know that what you're doing is working. And that empowers you then to just kind of keep chipping away at the little places where it's not what it's supposed to be. And I think one of the really important things too, I've got a friend named Michael Levine, and he wrote a book called Broken Windows, Broken Business. And there's a broken windows theory, sociology theory, probably from the 80s. And the sociologist went to a neighborhood where people had kind of been moving out, it kind of been abandoned, and somebody had broken a window. And so they kept revisiting this neighborhood, and that window never got fixed, and pretty soon, more broken windows, vandalism. Then came some criminal behaviors around that area. And they hypothesized that if you let something little go, things start to slide. And then Levine in his book wrote about different companies where the customer satisfaction was really high. They had fast service, so their stores were clean. And then pretty soon things started to decline. And I think we have to think about this. I've talked with Michael about it before. Schools are no different. If you let something little go, like let's say you've got a dress code and no belly shirts, and you see 1 or 2 girls with a belly shirt on and you don't do anything about it, I can guarantee that before long, 2 becomes 8, 8 becomes 16, 16 becomes 40, and pretty soon the dress code is gone. Somebody writes on a bathroom wall. You don't clean that up, there's going to be more and more and more. It's going to multiply. And so back to relentless pursuit of the little things keeps the big things from happening. And James Clear, Atomic Habits, anybody who tries to revolutionize their thinking, or we've all heard of principals who go into schools and just try to change everything, and it's a disaster. That's not how change works, and it's not sustainable. I want my school to be 1% better every day. I want to be 1% better every day. Not 10, not 50, not 70. Because if I want that, I'm going to fall short. I'm going to be demotivated, and I'm going to quit. But if every day I want things to be 1% better, that's attainable. And when you reach a goal, you are very much motivated to set another one and to reach it, and another one to reach it. So setting attainable goals, I think, is really, really important, because otherwise it's easy to just say, well, that didn't work. Nothing works. Might as well just do what we're doing.
So before we wrap up, if you could give one piece of advice to new principals stepping into their roles today, what would it be?
You're working with people, and people are complex, and people are complicated. And when we don't understand that, and when we treat people like widgets, there's a defect here and we've got to fix it, we alienate people. We undermine them. I guess my thing would be, we all want, I would assume, for our teachers to be the best they can be, to show up in the best ways for kids, to feel good about the work they do, and to feel valued. So you should ask yourself, is what I'm doing with this teacher or with these teachers getting me closer to what I want, or is it moving me back? With an eval, let's say I go into the kindergarten teacher's room, and she's fantastic, but boy, I better give her some constructive criticism. Is that going to get me closer to what I want, or is celebrating her strengths going to get me to what I want? I don't do data. I don't know how. People come in and tell me what the numbers mean, and then I make decisions based on that. If my superintendent said, yeah, you're good with people, but boy, you're terrible at data, you're going to have to fix that. No, thank you. No, thank you. Nope. I feel like the mindset that I have is, let me find out what you're really good at, and let's just find ways to just milk the heck out of that, because it's way easier and more uplifting and sustainable for someone to have their strengths celebrated and to be encouraged to double down on those than it is to find the area of deficit and just shine a spotlight on it and say, let's get this fixed. I think I'm good at what I do. Part of that is because my superintendent understands my strengths, and that's people and relationships, conflict resolution. And he doesn't force me into the data side of things. He understands that it would take me a lot of energy to be good at that. I would never want to do it. It would be forcing me. And so principals figure out, you hired these people. What are they good at? How can you get them to do more of that? Let's stop focusing on the negative. Now, of course, if somebody's got a really big deficit and therefore there's no teaching and learning going on, that's a different story. But we've got good teachers and great teachers who are being told all the time that this is what they need to change. Stop it. Stop it. Tell them what you love. When I grade papers, I don't just get out the red pen and mark up all the stuff you did wrong and ignore the things you did well. Always on a first draft, always I'm going to sell it. I'm looking at the content first. I'm like, oh my gosh, love this, love this, love this. And then we talk about that and we do more of what has been done well. And then we go back and we kind of revisit those things that need to be changed. But I think we focus too much on what we think people should do or be able to do, and not enough on what they are doing and how fantastic that is.
So, Lisa, thank you so much for being here. I mean, this has just been really incredible. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I always like to extend my reach, and I'd like to work with anybody I can work with, because this is just a really, really important job. It's an important calling, and I want people to love it as much as I do.
Before we wrap up, where can listeners find more about your work and also connect with you?
Yeah, I have a website, www.principalparry.com. And on Principal Perry, you can email me from there. And you can also see my TEDx talk. There are my list of kind of what I'd say are my 5 foundation speeches. And so I think that's a good place. I'm also on LinkedIn, and I post frequently on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Lisa Parry. My little picture is of me on the TEDx stage. And I would love any listeners. Find me on LinkedIn, give me an email. I'd love to work with you remotely, in person, doesn't matter. My mission is to help educators feel valued and help principals keep good teachers because our kids need them.
Thank you again. To our listeners, please, please, please check out Lisa. She is amazing, and you're going to find even more information than what we talked about on this podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Until next time, keep innovating, keep inspiring, and keep leading the way in education.